In order to be granted VA disability benefits, you need the correct qualifying service. Now, this may seem simple enough, but what counts as qualifying service differs if you're active duty, National Guard, or reservist. Welcome to VA Made Easy. I'm VA accredited attorney and U.S. Army combat veteran Ed Farmer. Today, I'm going to discuss what counts as qualifying military service for VA disability benefits and highlight the differences between active duty, reservists, and National Guardsmen. If you've been denied your claim, contact me at vetlawoffice.com. We not only provide zealous advocacy, we have access to VA medical nexus opinions. I'll prep you before your CMP exam, and we have investigators to help you out with those buddy statements. Sign up for a free consultation at vetlawoffice.com, but for now, let's get into it. All right, let's start with the most straightforward analysis here, and that is active duty service. If you are on active duty, that is qualifying service. So any disease or injury that is incurred or aggravated by your active duty service potentially qualifies for VA disability benefits. It doesn't even have to be directly related to your military duties. As long as you could point to something that occurred between the day you entered active duty and the day you left active duty, that counts. So you could be driving on the Autobahn on your day off and get into a car wreck and suffer PTSD, back injury, whatever it may be, that counts. You could be playing basketball and twist your knee, that counts. Pretty much anything that happens on your active duty time counts as qualifying military service. So when it comes to reservists and National Guard, it gets a little more tricky. Whether or not you have qualifying military service depends on your duty status at the time. So let's start with the first duty status, and that's active duty for training. This is when reservists or National Guard go off to do their basic training or AIT or tech school or whatever it may be. They're under federal orders to go and complete that training. While on active duty for training status, if you are injured or aggravated injury or incur a disease, then that counts as qualifying military service. Very similar to the active duty status. However, while under active duty for training status, you are not entitled to all the same presumptions that the active duty personnel would have. For instance, while you could still get service-connected for injury that's aggravated during your active duty for training period, you're not entitled to the presumption of aggravation as the regular active duty would be. You're also not entitled to some other presumptions of service connection. For instance, your only time is active duty for training. You would not be entitled to the presumption of service connection for ALS. However, you do maintain some presumptions. For instance, the Camp Lejeune presumption of service connection does include reservists and National Guard who served on active duty for training at Camp Lejeune. Next is inactive duty for training. Inactive duty for training is basically your weekend drills. So you reservists and National Guardsmen, every time you go on your weekend drill, usually that's inactive duty for training. Inactive duty for training counts as qualifying service if you're injured or aggravated injury, or you suffer cardiac arrest, a heart attack, or a stroke. Diseases are specifically excluded from service connection during that inactive for duty training period. Now, where inactive duty for training gets a little more tricky and why it's a little tougher for reservists and National Guardsmen to get service connected for injuries that occurred during this time is you need to be able to point to something that happened during your inactive duty for training that caused that injury. So it's not enough that you complained about back pain or neck pain to your medic or another medical professional in the service and it's in your service treatment records. That's usually not enough. And that's because reservists and National Guard 90% of the time are not completing military duties. So the VA doesn't know where those injuries occurred. You could have had it before your drill weekend and then just complained about it to your medic. You have to be able to point to something that caused that injury, and the best evidence for that is called a line of duty determination. What a line of duty determination is, it's basically a formal finding by the reserves or the National Guard that your injury is related to your military duties. If you don't have a line of duty determination, the next best evidence is a witness statement witnessing that you actually suffered some sort of injury during your drill weekend. So this could be tough to prove. If you're still in the reserves or National Guard, just make sure you get those line of duty determinations before you leave. All right, the next type of duty status is federal mobilization. So if you're a reserve or National Guardsman, you could be called up by the federal government or the president to serve under what's called Title 10. Title 10 means you're under federal control at that point. So all your reservists and National Guardsmen who are called to active service to serve in Iraq and Afghanistan, that service qualifies the same as if you were an active duty member. However, federal mobilization differs from state mobilization. Your reservists don't typically have to deal with state mobilization, but National Guardsmen do. And that's because the governors of the states are really the commanders in chief of the National Guardsmen. So they could call National Guardsmen to active service for state purposes. However, state active duty does not qualify for VA disability purposes. So if you're a National Guardsman, you are called up by the state to help fight floods or whatever it may be, that's not qualifying service. There's a famous VA case where the New Mexico National Guard was called up by the New Mexico governor to quell a state prison riot. The National Guardsmen went in there. They saw some horrible things. They suffered PTSD later. They were later granted benefits for PTSD until the VA found out, well, this was only state qualifying service, and they then had their benefits severed by a clear and unmistakable error because they did not have the correct qualifying service. So what is your remedy if you get hurt while on state active duty? Potentially a workers' comp claim because you would be a state employee at that time. And that does it, guys. That's the qualifying service. We have active duty, inactive duty for training, active duty for training, federal mobilization, and state active duty. Make sure you know if your duty status qualifies you for VA disability benefits. If you need help, visit me at vetlawoffice.com. But for now, keep liking, keep sharing, keep subscribing. And as always, you have the power to change your VA claim.